Welcome to Conversations with Pastor Charlie, a series of candid, insightful discussions offering a godly perspective on current events, interviews with people from all walks of life, and other topics the Lord places on Pastor Charlie's heart. Now here's Pastor Charlie.
Well, howdy. Tonight, I want to talk about living for show or living for service. Mark 12:38 through 44 is where our scriptures come from tonight, and it records two contrasting examples. And I want to read it in its entirety first, and then we'll talk about it. Mark 12:38. Here are some of the other things he, Jesus, taught them at this time. Beware of these teachers of religious law, for they love to parade in flowing robes and to have everyone bow down to them as they walk in marketplaces, and how they love the seats of honor in the synagogues and at banquets. But they shamelessly cheat widows out of their property, and then, to cover up the kind of people they really are, they make long prayers in public. Because of this, their punishment will be greater. Jesus went over to the collection box in the temple and sat and watched as the crowds dropped in their money. Many rich people put in large amounts of money. Then a poor widow came and dropped 2 pennies. He called his disciples to him and said, "I assure you, this poor widow has given more than all the others have given, for they have gave a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything she has." Wow. Well, first, Jesus warns about the religious leaders who loved attention and honor, but whose hearts were actually corrupt. Then he highlights a poor widow whose quiet act of sacrifice revealed true devotion to God. So let's look at the setting. This teaching happened on the Tuesday of Passion Week. Jesus had already answered many questions from the crowds and his disciples. Then he warned them in Mark 12:38, "Beware of these teachers of the law." Now the word beware means to clearly, or to see clearly, or even to perceive. Jesus was saying, basically, don't just accept everyone as they appear. Be discerning so you don't participate in their hypocrisy. Now, let's look at living for show. The religious leaders are an example of living for show. They wanted people to notice them. It says, for they loved to parade in flowing robes, to have everyone bow down to them as they walked into marketplaces. Now, these long robes symbolized status and honor. It was like a tuxedo. They wanted people to notice their importance. They also wanted recognition. It says they loved the seats of honor in the synagogues and banquet halls. It wasn't about serving God's people. It was about elevating themselves. They also exploited others. It says, but they shamelessly cheat widows out of their property. Now, instead of protecting the vulnerable, they took advantage of them. And they covered their corruption with long public prayers. We saw that in verse 40. But God, he saw through their hypocrisy. Jesus warned that their punishment would be severe because their hearts were not for God or for people. Pride and self-promotion can creep in anywhere, even in Bible study or preaching. We must guard ourselves from becoming proud peddlers of God's word instead of humble servants. Now let's look at living for service. Now, in contrast, Jesus pointed to the widow who gave 2 small coins, a couple of pennies. What was her sacrifice? It says a poor widow came and dropped in 2 pennies. This poor widow has given more than all the others have given, They gave a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything she has. She had great value in God's eyes. Others gave out of abundance, but she gave from her need. Jesus said her offering was greater because it revealed her heart of devotion. The religious leaders gained recognition from people, but the widow received approval from God. So I would ask, which are you living for, show or service? The scribes, they received the applause of men, but faced judgment. The widow gave quietly and received the commendation of Christ himself. At the end of our lives, will Jesus say, "Well done, good and faithful servant"? Or will he expose a life lived for nothing but show?
Jesus is coming soon. Are you ready to meet him face to face? Are your family and friends ready to meet him face to face? Please be ready. Then help others get ready. God bless.